Hey guys, welcome back to Catfish Aquatics. Today we're making a super classy, not at all trashy looking water bucket filter. These are great when you need a lot of mechanical filtration in a pinch. This all came about because my goldfish are suffering from a parasite called Hophorellus carasi. I'm probably not saying right. I can make another video about that later. But the long and the short of it is basically this is a kidney damaging parasite that part of its life cycle involves aquatic worms. In the hopes of breaking the life cycle, I went nuclear and put all of my fish into absolutely bare bottom systems. This involved putting the goldfish into kiddie pools on my porch, but unfortunately because of how my porch is laid out, the goldfish were getting just enough sunlight that there was a complete and total algae bloom. You could barely see an inch into the water, which is not what you want when you're trying to closely monitor your fish for signs of dropsy. So after whining about my pea soup problem to another aquatic friend, he recommended making bucket filters as a way of having extra mechanical filtration to hopefully filter out some of the algae. I won't lie to you, these aren't pretty, but at least they get the job done. So let's get started. Bucket filters don't require a lot of supplies, and luckily they're all pretty easy to get. The two hardest and expensive parts are the drill, which if you don't own, you can likely borrow or rent from a hardware store, and the water pump. I can leave a link to the one that I bought in the description. Now let's get started where the hose meets the bucket. So here's a hose barb L brackety thing. These come in all sorts of sizes, combinations, and materials. You want the nylon barb with the measurements that match your other equipment. Here's what I mean. There are two measurements on every hose barb packaging. You need to make sure that the hose barb matches your hose internal width and your hose pump attachment. In this case, it was 3/8 of an inch. The second measurement is the part that attaches to the bucket itself. If you don't have access to a lot of drill bits, find a hose barb that works with what you can realistically drill. This measurement also dictates what size washer you get. It's pretty easy stuff. You don't need a lot of hosing or washers, so to keep the cost down, it may be worth going someplace like Ace Hardware where you can buy just what you need. But if you can't find someplace that sells hosing by the foot or just washers individually, there's always the slightly more expensive option where you can get more hosing for other projects. Luckily, I already had some old hosing on hand for this DIY. You need two washers that match the size of your barb. In this case, I needed a 1/2 inch washer, and I was able to buy just the two I needed with some spare change in my car. If you're worried about breaking your washers or you're making multiple buckets, it's worth just buying the package of them though. Now let's move on to the bucket. Just because we're going cheap doesn't mean you don't have options. Just about every hardware store has their own color and branding bucket. Ace Hardware has a white bucket, Lowe's and Petco have a dark blue bucket, Home Depot has an orange bucket. Pick whatever's calling to you. You can also make this a little bit classier if you want this to be a permanent filter by switching the bucket for a plastic pot. Just make sure to get one without any drain holes. I used an old Home Depot bucket for my first one, but for this photo, I'm using a nondescript blue bucket. On to the actual filter media for a second. Polyfill is a lot of people's go-to cheap filter media. For anyone who doesn't know, this is what's in your stuffed animals. But before you go murdering your childhood toys, you can buy this at just about any craft store or stores that sell quilting and stuffed animal making supplies. You have a few options when it comes to stuffing, and different brands are good for different things. Here's two different types of stuffing. You have the cheaper stuffing on the right and the much nicer plush stuffing on the left. Luckily for filters, you want the cheap stuff. It isn't formed in these little clumps that will give you a better all-around filtration like the nicer stuff, bundled into these little ploofs that's made to stop the pillow from matting. Water would go right through the thicker portions and not allow it to actually work as a filter media. And of course, another option, but more expensive, are a bunch of plastic pot scrubbies. I can give a link to a great breakdown of different DIY filter media in the description. So now that we have all the pieces, let's get to the actual construction. When you're planning out where to drill, keep in mind that you want the holes on opposite sides, or at least not in a line. This will force the water to go through the filter media rather than just channeling up any side. When you're picking out your drill bits, you want to make sure that they're just slightly smaller than the threaded part of your hose barb. After that, you just drill your holes. Remember to put your washers on before attaching your hose barb. You can see me struggling a bit here. Apply a little force to screw in your hose barb. You may choose to add a bit of pond silicone or caulking around the outside joints to give a little bit of extra protection. I tore through my first bucket a little when drilling, making it leak quite a bit. A little bit of pond silicone was all it needed to stop. Just keep in mind the dry time before you try out your filter. Now just put in your filter media. I like having the pot scrubbies next to the intake and outtake at least, but it may not be needed depending on your stuffing type and your flow rate. But depending, it might also clog your flow, so just keep that in mind. Now you're ready to attach your hose and get to it. The first little bit, your stuffing may rise, just keep pushing it back until it all gets soaked. It's important to monitor your filter for the first little bit to make sure that your joints aren't leaking or that you aren't dumb like me and turn the pump on way too high and it starts to spill over. If you've already had the water pump with a higher flow rate or you just want more filtration, you can always add a second or larger outflow. And there you go. Like I said, they're not the prettiest looking thing, but they get the job done. Within 24 hours, I was already seeing my water start to clear up, and not gonna lie, it was really nice seeing my fish for the first time in forever. Of course, if you want more fishy facts or aquarium DIYs, let me know in the comments below. Also, if you have anything else that you want to see, let me know. My goal this year was to start uploading videos not just about aquatic pet care, but also about aquatic sciences and maybe even unique species highlights. So everybody, thanks for watching.